NC State in action this weekend. I kind of want to go into. By the way, they're playing at Stanford tomorrow, 7:00 tip-off. You can listen to that game over on Mix 101.5. We've talked a lot, Graham, about the late game struggles for NC State basketball. A lot, right? Look at the last 7 games for them. All losses. All relatively close losses for the most part. Starting with a close loss, 1-possession loss against North Carolina at home. Since then, they've lost to Virginia Tech. They've lost at home to Cal. They've lost to SMU. They've lost to Duke. They lost to Clemson. They lost on the road at Cal. But even before that, you beat Notre Dame in a 1-possession game. You lost close to Wake Forest, and you lost close to UVA. They've lost 9 of 10. So, Graham, I went and looked at each of the last 10 games for NC State basketball. Looked at each of the last 10 games. And I went specifically to the last 4 minutes of the game for each of those 10 games. And the reason why I did that, Graham, was because I wanted to make sure that the numbers matched what my eyes were seeing in terms of late game struggles. On average, in the last 4 minutes of games, for the last 10 games, again, they've lost 9 out of 10. In the last 4 minutes, they averaged 5.8 points in the last 4 minutes of games. Now, average that scoring pace out over 40 minutes, it's 58 points. Not good. Not good at all. If you actually cut it down to just the last 7 games, these 7 straight losses, it's less than that. It's 5.4. You also look at points allowed. Go to the last 7 games in the last 4 minutes of the last 7 games. Points allowed. Averaging about 8 points allowed in the last 4 minutes of games during this 7-game losing streak. And you wonder why you're losing all these close games. You wonder why. So you look at, again, we'll just go to the 7-game losing streak. The last 4 minutes, they're scoring at an average rate of just over 5 points, while giving up 8. Extrapolate that scoring rate over the course of a game, you're basically losing like 80 to 55 or 80 to 54. That's essentially what it is. That's the rate of scoring during that 4-minute stretch. The key 4 minutes, because it's late in games, and you wonder again why they've struggled so much. Against Virginia Tech, let's go to North Carolina. Against North Carolina, they actually scored 8 points in the last 4 minutes against North Carolina. Against Virginia Tech, only 4 points scored in that game. Allowed 12 in the last 4 minutes. Against Cal, the first time they played, only scored 7 points in the last few minutes of that game. Against SMU, they only scored 5 points, gave up 7. Against Duke, scored 2 points, gave up 9. Against Clemson, scored 7, gave up 9. Against Cal, their last loss a couple nights ago, they only scored 5, gave up 10. That's the last 4 minutes of the game. That is where this team is right now. Struggling late in games. And it's not, again, just we were missing this one player, or this one guy was sick, this one guy was hurt, and it's an anomaly and it's a one-time thing. It's a pattern. It's a pattern. When you lose 9 to 10, and you're outscored consistently in the last 4 minutes of games, you can't even find the bottom of the net. Against Virginia Tech, you had a lead. You scored 4 minutes. In the last 4 minutes, you scored 4 points, and you allowed 12. Even against Duke, you played Duke really well. You did. But the last 4 minutes of that game, you scored 2 points. And Duke scored 9. Now, be honest, you're outmatched against Duke. It's what it is. Now, you play Stanford tomorrow. I don't know how you're going to cover Max Raynaud. I don't know how you're going to do it. I was at the game in Carolina when Stanford played against UNC. Stanford at times actually went with a 1-3-1 zone with Max Raynaud, their big 7'2" guy, standing in the middle of that 1-3-1. Just arms and limbs everywhere, trying to take away skip passes and such. Forced UNC to be a perimeter team, shoot from the outside. Do not be shocked tomorrow if you see that from Stanford. Do not be surprised at all. do not be surprised. Because NC State struggles to shoot from the outside. Graham, you've been to a few games this season. You've seen them all play.
Yep.
They struggle shooting from the outside. Do not be shocked if we see Stanford go 1-3-1 zone and force them just to shoot from the outside.
They also just struggle to just match runs. Feels like a recurring thing that you see, and kind of just to tie into your point. I didn't watch the game against Cal the other night because I was getting over the flu. But Paul and I played a game on Next Up where I tried to predict exactly what happened and almost got it right verbatim. I said probably in the last 5 or so minutes, they went on a scoring drought and finished maybe 1 of 13 from the field.
Mm-hmm.
Finished 1 of 11. Didn't score for the last 4 minutes. And that's just been part of their kryptonite. It's just falling apart late and not being able to throw the ball into the ocean if they're standing on a pier.
It's a struggle for them. Which, by the way, again, we've said it before. I'll say it again. They are in danger of missing the ACC tournament, not the NCAA tournament. The ACC tournament. ACC has 18 teams in men's and women's basketball. They have 18 schools now with the additions of Cal, Stanford, and SMU. ACC is still only going to take the top 15 teams. NC State's on the outside looking in. They are 2 games back of that 15 spot, and there are a bunch of teams sitting there with 4 wins. And NC State has only 2. So NC State at minimum, needs to win 3 more games this season in conference play and hope that one of the teams that has 4 losses loses out just to even get in. Just to even get in. And that's also the hope that you play Boston College. You have to play them. You have to win that game because you have the same record as them in the conference. The love, all the good graces from the Final Four run last year, it's gone. It's gone.